right, welcome to another episode of Modern Life Podcast. I'm Sam, joined by my sister Tabby. How are you, Tabby?
I'm good. I was away in Germany after 10
were.
years, and then I was sick, but we are back now.
You were there for what, like 3 weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to make a whole podcast about your experience from Germany,
It's not that interesting.
but
Just
I
look
thought
up
it was interesting.
Google tourists on the romantic road.
But it's hard to make a podcast after you've already talked so much about it. So, anyways, we decided this week we're going to dive a little bit into video games. We've done movies the last couple times, and my sister and I do enjoy, not that we're crazy gamer heads,
I'm
but
very picky.
we do enjoy our occasional video game here and there, and I mean, we're somewhat passionate about it. I used to play way more. Middle school, high school, I would play like almost every single day, but those days are long gone. Those days are long gone. I don't got time for that anymore. But I think this year, 2018, I think it's the most video games I've played since maybe like high school.
Really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just like here and there, playing some shooter games, playing some other stuff, but yeah, just getting back into it a little bit more than I used to, I think. But so specifically, we wanted to cover, what's the game? You suggested the game.
Kentucky Route Zero.
Kentucky Route Zero. It's an indie game.
It's a click and point.
Click and point.
It's a lot of reading.
A lot of reading.
It's a Rust Belt Gothic video game, and it kind of was a response to the recession. So the whole premise of this game, we're just going to explain a little bit because I don't think it's that well known.
No.
You are a truck driver. You're trying to find Highway Zero. You are in Kentucky. That's where the name comes from. And because it has so many Gothic elements, it can get very abstract at times. And I want to say the aesthetic of it visually is very basic. It's not like a movie level of animation. It's kind of more like squares. Not on a Minecraft level, but
No, but it is almost just like all these.
Yeah.
It's like if someone just took a bunch of squares and triangles and made graphics out of it, but it's like to an extreme level,
Yeah.
like the most beautiful version of that.
Yes. and there's
just
very little color.
very, very little color, so the color that does show up really pops out, but it's also the way they really get, it's a gorgeous game, hands down, and I think just how they do, how the shadows are done, and how colors pop out, how the shadows reflect on everything. I think that's kind of the key to what makes the game look so good, no?
Yeah, like the clouds and trees were just diamond shapes, but
Right.
you look at it and you're like,
Right.
oh, that's a tree. Like somehow your brain still
Yeah, like you get it.
recognizes it. Also, in the third act, I think there was a singing scene where the ceiling just lifts off of the building, and it's all just triangles, but
And the lead singer's in this bright blue dress, so it just
it's like a white
pops
dress.
right out.
And I also really love the elements of really using foreground, middle ground, background, because you sometimes have these silhouettes in the foreground, like you'll come out of a house and then there's these trees you're walking through, or just silhouettes of people playing instruments, and the music is really gorgeous, and I found myself, like, even if I had something else to do, just kind of staying in a scene and listening to the music. Another image that I found really, really striking, which I don't even know if I'm the only one who finished the game. My brother did not finish the
We're going to get to that.
but there was a scene where there's a tree fallen on the side of the road, and it's on a fence, and the tree's in the middle of the picture, and there's light shining on it. And I just stared at that forever. It was probably one of the most gorgeous, and it very much reminded me, if I'm comparing it to one of those moments where you just kind of stay in a game, like when you first see Libertalia in Uncharted, for example, and you're kind of just staying there and you're looking at all the buildings and you're like, I finally found it, and there's such cool stuff to explore.
Right.
And I think it's interesting you take that very cinematic level of animation, and you can recreate the same effect for a player with a completely different, more elementary art style.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, the game is just really difficult to explain exactly what it is. And you suggested the game. I really had no idea going into it what I was getting into. And at first, I was really kind of captivated by it, and I didn't really know like what time period is this game. When you first start in the first level, you're at that gas station, and just kind of by how the truck looks and the aesthetic and everything. At first I thought we're like 1930s Great Depression, but there's like a computer in the gas station, so I was like, oh wait. So, but it's like it's like its own, and I don't even know that it's, from everything I researched, I couldn't really find that it has a specific date. I mean, it is kind of, it's like a little bit its own world, right?
I think the experiences described in it resonate so much with kind of the dark side of Americana and the experiences people are going through still from that recession, that it kind of made more sense to me that it was a little bit modern. But yeah, there's many elements in it that are kind of more in the past, so it's a little... and
I got not even halfway through. I almost finished Act 2, and I just couldn't. Is it Act 2, Scene 3? I think it is, when you're trying to find a doctor in the game, right? And you end at the museum.
So the main character's leg gets, just to kind of tell our listeners,
gets
busted in a mine
early on. And you're kind of dealing with it.
You're just trying to find a doctor later on.
And you're walking through this museum, and I was like, I just lost, like the game was just too slow for me.
It's too abstract at times too. There's a scene where you're doing something with a computer later on, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I was getting very frustrated because it was tedious, and it didn't, to me, do anything for the very loose story and characters. So there are parts of it that are just, I don't understand the point of it, and I'm not enjoying myself.
Right, and I kind of felt that way
for most of it.
For pretty much all of it, and I was just like, I can't finish this. Like, it's just not for me, and I'm not saying it's a bad game, but it's just, I just realized this is just not my wheelhouse whatsoever. And I was getting, I don't know if this has ever happened to me. I mean, maybe a couple times in a video game where it was just, I was getting like seriously infuriated walking through that museum because it was just so just painfully slow, and the
narrative switches. You're seeing everything through other people's
it's constantly
eyes.
Doing that switching, and I was just like, I'm going to turn this off.
It tries too hard to be disorienting at times.
I think that's what it is.
The first act I love, and then in the fourth act, you're actually not on a road, you're on a boat. And that's where it kind of finds its voice again for me. The first act and the fourth act were really the best ones. And then the fourth act, there's something that happens to the main character that to me was just one of those, oh my god, moments. We
can do a spoiler alert.
So once you get your leg repaired, it shows up as like a skeleton leg.
Right, I saw that.
Okay, and then later on you have a skeleton arm, and then once you're on the boat, the main character starts drinking a lot.
Right.
And you get, there's a distillery that comes up a lot of times, and it's run by these skeletons, and the way they get more employees is they kind of rope you into it in a very sleazy way where you immediately recognize sort of how corporations operate, and they get the main character Conway to drink a glass of their liquor, and then they say, oh, you have to pay this off forever, so you're now indebted to the company.
Right.
And I did not click on that glass, but the game makes you drink it anyways.
Okay.
So at the end, you're kind of with Shannon again, this other character, kind of handy girl character you're traveling around with. And these skeleton people are following you. And the main character drops off Shannon at the shore, and then once you come back to the boat, Conway's gone. And it's just 3 skeletons now instead of 2, like floating away in this other boat. And it was just, that was one of those moments I was like, oh, it was just like a really cool moment. Like, he's gone, he's a skeleton now.
And that's the end of Act 4?
The end
Because there's one more act that hasn't been released yet.
I don't know if it'll ever get released. I don't know if this is like a Winds of Winter.
Right.
George R. Martin, like, it is coming out, but it's never coming out.
Right.
The end of Act 4, you get off the boat with the truck. So Shannon is now the main character. She now has the truck. And you're still kind of trying to do this last delivery.
Right.
But the thing I was confused about, and I think you looked this up, is whenever I'm confronted with choices for Conway to be an alcoholic or not be an alcoholic, I would always be like, oh no, I drink coffee, or no, I don't drink. But still the game at the end was like, he drinks, and then he starts drinking more, and then he turns into a skeleton. And I was confused about that because I didn't choose those things.
And I think that's what... I didn't know it early on, but now looking back on it, I think that's what really... That's the core of my problem with the game. And to quote some... Because I looked up, what do other people think about this game? And it seems to be one of these games where it's either you are absolutely in love with it, or you think it's like the most boring game ever made. I didn't see any middle ground.
There can be no in between.
No. And what people... All the reviewers that really loved it, I pulled some quotes, and it actually really kind of summarizes what does absolutely not work for me with the game. So, for example, one reviewer said, no matter what... So early on, you can choose the name for your dog. You have this dog in the game. It goes, no matter what name you choose for the dog, it doesn't change anything that follows in the story, but does it change how you feel about that dog? Damn right. And then to kind of follow up, there was another quote. Let me look it up here. I wasn't asked to make a decision that could affect where I'd go in the game or what I would see. I was simply creating the history of Conway and his dog. There are no choices. You are simply telling the game who you are and how you feel. And it's just, that doesn't...
But I was telling the game that I am not interested in alcohol, and yet still the plot point was that he has this problem with alcoholism.
The whole thing, it seems to be, is just like... You're making these choices to kind of like, oh, this is how I feel right now, but it doesn't. You can't affect the story in any way at all, and it's just that doesn't
resonated with me.
I'm like, that doesn't work for me. I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I agree.
It's just like, I don't know. But some people really seem to love that approach, to where they can just kind of like, there is a way. Like, you're not affecting the story, but you're kind of like, you're building the history of this character. That's what I kept reading a lot. But it's like, I'm not involved enough, and I don't really care enough to make the history for this person and their dog. And I don't know, I just, like, the moment in Uncharted you talked about where you find the lost city, was in Uncharted 4, right? It's
every Uncharted, you find a lost city.
But when you finally, in a game like that, so maybe you spend 100 hours with all the Uncharted games combined before you find it. So there's just like this massive payoff, right? And it's just, for me, I start this game, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, and there isn't like really a clear narrative, and it's just all kind of like blah, and you're in this, hey, you're just here to be here and enjoy this world, and you're kind of just making up the history of this character, and it's just very kind of wishy-washy to me, and it just doesn't work for me at all. And like when I was playing the game and I forget what I asked you, but I'm like, are these certain things ever explained, like the people in the mine in the first level, right underneath the gas station.
I don't think it's a mine.
It's just a gas station, and like they appear and then they disappear, and I'm like, does that ever get explained down the road? And you're like, I don't know, man. Like, you just enjoy the scenery, just enjoy the game. That was like a big red flag for me. I was like, oh, I don't know about this.
I want to go back to, maybe we can kind of put a picture of this online too, of the gas station, which is one of the iconic images they use in their publicity too.
Right. No, it looks awesome.
And just setting the scene for, it just romanticizes that life on the road.
Right.
And it's this just beautiful kind of Americana of like the lights, the people who inhabit that space, and how do they live
right
on the road. Just that first kind of setting of
right.
This is where you are tonally and aesthetically. It puts you right, like this is the game.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I thought that worked.
And it's just like, I want it, because the game has just dropped one of the most gorgeous games I've seen in a long time, and it's just, I wanted to like it, and it was just didn't work for me, to where it's like, the choices you make don't really matter. It's just really slow at parts, really abstract, like, I'm not always sure what's going on, and it doesn't really seem to matter, like, hey, just go with it. And for some people that seems to really work, and for me though, like, you know, the scenery, the beautiful graphics, those are all things to me that enhance an already good game, but to make the whole game around that, it just doesn't work. Not for me personally. Yeah.
So there's I kind of looked up a little bit about the mines, because you keep coming back to people who used to work in the mines. They're now abandoned. And the people who used to work there used to use tokens to keep fans running. They basically use those tokens, their own payment, to be able to live in these mines.
Right.
That is not, from my research, that is not something that still happens today. People, especially in the United States, people getting paid in tokens.
Right.
The most recent that I looked up is actually Walmart in Mexico paying workers with tokens instead of money.
Oh, God.
Which is like, doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where it combines things of the past with the present.
Right.
And I feel like I've read, maybe from all the like Gothic novels I've read too, I recognize so many of the themes. Kind of like that dark horror, references to death, references to... Yeah, and this mine thing, this was actually very hard to look up. If you look up any sort of token or mine, all you get online is Bitcoin. Like, it's very difficult to research. Like, so I found some website from people who collect coins and tokens and stuff. I did not realize that tokens, you cannot call something a coin unless it is issued by a government. So you can, but in colloquial speech, of course, anything that looks like a coin is a coin. But to talk professionally, that's my little bit of knowledge that I found out from playing this game.
So the game, it's supposed to be 5 acts. 4 have been released. Do we know when the 4th one was released? It was like
a while ago.
Yeah, and that was one of the, I guess there were some really big complaints where I think it was between I want to say it was between Act 3 and 4, where it took like over a year to get released. And you had some people, obviously, that paid for all the episodes up front, so they're like, where the hell's my game?
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable.
And I think the game as a whole is, what, $25? I think it was $7 an episode if you purchase them all by themselves, which, I don't know, I think some of the later acts are a lot longer, but like Act 1 and 2 doesn't seem like there's
Act 1 is the shortest, yeah.
Yeah, like if I paid $7 and then played Act 1, I would have been like, like there's not a whole lot going on here.
I get it.
However, I don't know if you looked into this at all, to please gamers, I really should know what the company is that made this game. I think it's like Cardboard Games or something. Because there was so much time between episodes, they did some things like release some extra content between the episodes. Like one was a stage play that one of the characters wrote within the game, I guess, and you could also watch it through VR goggles if you have all
I
that.
heard about that, but I was like, I'm not doing that.
No, yeah, there was just like all this extra content. But one thing I thought was really cool is between Act 3 and 4, they released something called Here and There Along the Echo, which I think is one of the parts of the games too. I didn't get that far. But you could actually call in to an actual phone line, and there was all these, you were just forwarded to, what do they call, like one of those phone trees, right? Press 1 for this, press 2 for that. And there were some quirky things about the game if you press certain things, but I guess one of the options was to leave a message of your most, I think your earliest memory they wanted to know, right? And you could call in, basically leave a voicemail, and then some of those they actually used in the game. There's a part in the game where you can pick up the phone in the Echo, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I thought like that stuff, I thought that's pretty cool. That's really creative.
Yeah, but when I played it in the game, I was like, "This
you
makes
had no idea,
sense.
right? Okay. Yeah.
It was one of those moments of, okay, what am I doing
Right.
here? So I wanted to talk a little bit about Act 2, which you played the
Most of
beginning
it, yeah.
Act 2 starts out in this cathedral that's been converted to an office, and there's a lot of bureaucracy going on. You keep getting sent around.
Ugh.
And
Yeah.
and there's actually, and I don't know if this is on purpose, but that whole second act, the beginning of it at least, felt extremely Dickensian to me. The that office reminded me, it's called the Circumlocution Office from Little Dorrit, which is one of Dickens' novels. That's just like a government office where you will never get what you want, and you will just keep getting sent around or come back later. That's what it felt like. And then also the distillery that keeps popping up is called Hard Times, which is also a name of a novel by Charles Dickens. It just kind of reminded me a little bit of the, and I don't know if that was on purpose or not.
I did notice something about my own style of gameplay when I was in that bureaucratic office, because I think I'm so used to playing games where it's like you know when you're done and let's say you're like an Uncharted game or some sort of type of first person shooter, if you're done with an area, like you go and explore and try to find all the little knickknacks, because once you go past a certain point you can't come back to that area. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm the only one who finds all these treasures.
No, but
You're not finding these treasures. I'm doing all the work.
I was so you're obsessed with finding
have
those
to
treasures.
find all the treasures.
But I'm so used to that type of gameplay to where I found myself, okay, so what the bureaucratic building has, like, 5 floors, I think, right?
I kind of went around a lot.
Right,
and
I started
my time.
going, I'm like, let me explore every single floor first, but then I wasn't really finding anything,
Like,
so then I was like, okay, well, let me actually go with the story, but I just noticed, I'm like, oh my god, because I was so afraid of, like, what if I just follow the story and then I can't explore the other floors or something like that? Like, I don't know.
But there was nothing in the other floors. And the elevator is very slow. It takes a lot of time.
It was just funny to notice that in my own head. It was like, I've just been trained to play a game a certain way. So I'm like, well, that's kind of refreshing, I guess. But still, it's just the character at that point in the game, the leg is already messed up, so you're walking really slow. The elevator in the building is really slow. You keep getting sent around, and I think that's kind of when I started getting a little bit annoyed.
Yeah. And it's supposed to make
you feel
annoyed, but that still doesn't cut it for me.
There's just no payoff for any. I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
That's
exactly.
Yeah. I'm just there to be there, and nothing really matters, and hey, the music's nice, and look at all the pretty graphics,
so
and it's just...
Once you find the doctor, actually, this is very interesting.
Okay.
The doctor lives in the woods somewhere.
Right.
and he's pretty much the only person practicing the vocation he trained for. You constantly run into people like, oh, I used to be a mathematician, but there are no jobs available.
Right.
It's just very much like, oh, you recognize this feeling, you're stuck with student loans now, you can never pay them back. These themes constantly come up again. It's a very political game.
Right.
The doctor is the only one able to practice his own vocation because he got a scholarship through a pharmaceutical company. He now has to always prescribe people
a certain medicine,
right. Which is something that happens in real life. I think there's a John Oliver episode about this.
I'm sure there is.
And you kind of, as you're fading out for the procedure and then fade back in, he has explained it all to you while you're unconscious, which is exactly one of those things where people use certain words to make you buy things or just ways that make you feel stupid and you don't want to ask about it.
Right.
I've found myself in that situation where I suddenly have like a medical bill and I'm like, I don't remember agreeing to this. I don't remember us talking about this.
Yeah.
Especially, in this country. I feel like it's a little dystopian when it comes to the healthcare, and that very much rang true for me, like in the game.
Yeah. Just to finish it out on my side, one last quote, and we sort of already went over this, but this person loved the game, but this kind of exactly sums up why it doesn't work for me. What Kentucky Route Zero gets at that I think is often missed in narrative choices is that what's really important is not asking the player what they think will happen, but asking them how they feel. And I'm just like, the game doesn't need to know how I feel. I can know how I feel.
I can know how I
right?
feel. That's interesting.
But for some people, that really obviously struck a nerve, and they're like, there's a small like fan base for this game that's like really obsessed with this game.
I get what you mean, because I actually am looking over my notes and I wrote down towards the end of Act 3. Game uses accomplishing tasks as a mechanic, but does not satisfy its narrative, and there's no resolution. Like, I actually have that written down here, and I think you said the same thing earlier.
So there is no resolution for a lot of stuff? It just kind of here's how it is?
And you keep meeting new characters, and part of that is fun, and part of that is also, well, wait, can we finish off with what we already have? Coming back to Game of Thrones. I don't want to hear about your 20 million new characters.
I call that the Lost syndrome. Remember Lost?
I never watched it.
I stopped after the second, like midway through the second, because it just kept being new and new stuff, and it would never get mentioned or explained. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm good.
His strongest point. It's just like, I'm just throwing things out there. I have no idea what I'm doing with it.
Yeah. Anyways, is there anything else you want to say about the game? Closing thoughts.
In Act 4, there's another reference to Greek mythology, I believe. The river you're traveling on is the Lete, which is the river of... which one is it? The river of forgetfulness. And that is mentioned a few times, where the people living on that boat that you're traveling on kind of get... they call it soggy-brained, or they forget certain things. That's my only little other thing that... I'm sure there's more references to things and other media that I just didn't pick up on. But
right. Did you overall you like the game? Would you play it again?
No, I would not play it again.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
I ain't got the time for that. I have a complicated relationship.
It's complicated.
It's the same that you said. There's some things I'm crazy about, and then there's other parts where I was like, I need to get through this, or I got mad.
I'm gonna go crazy. Yeah, that's how I felt in the museum, and I'm like, I don't need to put myself through this abuse. I'm gonna turn it off.
And the thing is, it wasn't due to my own inability. Me trying to do the elevator level in Uncharted on crushing and taking like 5 hours to do it the first time around, and me
this
just
is also
getting
the Uncharted podcast.
Me getting just angry. It's like, that's me failing.
Right, because it's not really. There's nothing really skill based.
I just want to tell our listeners that I can now do that elevator level very well on crushing.
Everyone's really proud of you.
Yes, thank you.
Only took you 500 times. Are there any games, now switching it up a little bit, Is there anything coming out soon you're excited about as far as video games?
Yeah, we're probably gonna talk about
releases.
Last of Us.
Last of Us 2, right?
Once it comes out, definitely. All those people in the trailer at the party, they're dead. Let's face it.
Yeah.
They're not gonna
The
make it.
gameplay trailer.
They're not gonna make it. That's
Yeah.
my
You
prediction.
can make a whole, or you know what? It might not even be about just Last of Us 2. It can make just a whole Last of Us umbrella
Oh,
podcast.
I'm sure we'll talk
Yeah.
about the first one.
But that's not coming out to what next? They don't even know yet. They say spring 2019, so we shall see. One thing I'm really excited about, I've been waiting on forever, Red Dead Redemption 2.
And that will be
is-
a reversal of this podcast when my brother's just in love with it and I'm like, Rockstar hates all minorities and I hate them so much, but this game is probably going to be super gorgeous.
It's gonna be
and the
gorgeous.
music
It's
is
gonna be really
great.
fun, and I hope. So, you know, earlier I said it's more video games this year that I've played probably in the last 4 years. You know, I've just been playing a little bit more than usual, and I think if I remember right, it was early on this year where I tried to replay Red Dead Redemption 1 because I just have some really fond memories of that
Hey,
game.
you made it to Mexico. It's okay. Nobody can make it to Mexico.
No, I didn't even. I started the game and I think I played for 20 minutes. I'm like,
No, you got pretty far.
No, I didn't.
I remember you getting
That
to
wasn't this
Mexico.
year. That was
Oh.
longer ago. I tried restarting it this year and I turned it off after 20 minutes to where it's like I want to be. I love being in that Wild West world, but I forgot just how much you're riding your horse in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, I don't have time for this.
And then somebody's like, Master, my card! And you're like, oh, fine.
Yeah, what's his name, Mr.
Mr. Marston.
Mr. Marsden.
I want to pick these flowers.
Yeah, just all the annoying side missions, which I think a lot of people felt that way about certain things in that game, and hopefully a lot of that will be fixed in the second one. But it's just I just want to be in that Wild West world, and even though Rockstar Games has a lot of faults in pretty much all their games,
I'm so proud of you for saying that.
what they do just amazingly well is they create these open worlds where I
Yeah.
want to spend time in them.
Yeah.
And that brings me to like an LA Noire, right? It's like a game no one ever talks about anymore because it was kind of a weird game. Like read the faces.
We're making the facial expressions at
like-
each other right now.
It's so much fun in that era of Los Angeles and like driving those old cars and all the good old fashioned racism. No, I'm just kidding.
Watching women get beaten up. But I'm not the one doing it, so it's okay.
And again, that's a game that I don't think I just
You
don't think
wouldn't
I
go
probably
back
wouldn't
to it,
couldn't
no.
play again. But that world I just want to be in. I hope they make a second version, you know, LA Noire 2 or switch up the city. And there's a lot of people hoping for that, and maybe one day Rockstar will get around to it because I think it'd be just so easy to make a fun sequel for that game to where you could just make it Chicago Noir and you make it during the Prohibition era, right? And give me like Josh Brolin as the main guy voice acting, and let's go kick some Al Capone ass, right? Like I just think it'd be so easy to make a cool follow up to that game, and I don't know, maybe it will never happen because they're just gonna sell so much more of Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption that even though LA Noire was, I think it sold almost 1 million copies, it's just probably not even worth it to them because
Yeah.
they make just so much money on these other games. And another one that looks really cool, and I don't know if you've looked this up, there's this game coming out soon called Cyberpunk 2077.
I've heard a few things about
I
it.
haven't heard anything about that until I kind of looked at the schedule of upcoming games and I started looking at the gameplay. And that's one where, I just hadn't heard much about, and it looks really cool where it's kind of like, it is an open world game, which I know you're not always the craziest about, but it looks like a Blade Runner meets Grand Theft Auto.
I just need a friend. I just can't, like, Horizon Zero Dawn is amazing, but I'm running around by myself.
Well,
I
then
need
you
my,
might like this because
my crew.
it's a first person, but it's also partially an RPG, I believe. And so
Okay.
you got some people with you, and just from the gameplay that I watched, I'm like, this looks really cool. It's got some really cool concepts. So that's something I might be looking into. Otherwise, I was looking at the the release schedule, and it's there's not a whole lot I'm getting super excited about, which is good.
See.
So I
Yeah,
won't
right?
waste all my time, all my free time. You know, you have all your usual Call of Duty Black Ops 4, which is like, really? Are we? I remember when the first Black Ops came out, and like, I can't believe there's a fourth one. Like, just cranking out all these other titles, but and I don't know if there's a third Tomb Raider game coming out too. I don't know if you remember, I bought that first one.
Does she get like an entire giant metallic splinter through her brain, and she's like, "I'm fine now."
I remember playing
Just
that
put a
first
Band-Aid
one
on
with
it.
the reboot, and it's just so ridiculous.
makes
But I
sense.
do. This one is supposed to be a little darker, and what do they explain it as? Stealth gameplay has been made more complex. Tombs and crypts are bigger than ever.
Bigger than ever.
I don't know, and I'm just from the little bit of gameplay or the trailer I saw, it looked like they're kind of going in a little bit of a more Uncharted direction. So I'm like, yeah, I might look into that and see what the reviews have to say. It might be kind of cool. I do have to put up with her posh British accent.
Oh, my brother
remember.
has sorry, if there are any UK listeners, which there are probably not, my brother has a thing about...
The posh, the Emma Watson. Oh.
Emma, you're doing
I
great.
can do about
Don't
10
listen
minutes
to-
of that
don't
before
listen
my
to him.
brain goes crazy. Hello, governor.
That's not even the right accent. That's not a positive accent.
I can't do it. But Emma Watson, that would be my best way to describe it. It's just too Shakespearean trained.
Shakespearean,
Like,
yeah.
I can't do this. So that wraps it up for today's episode. Just want to thank all you guys out there for listening. We are on Twitter at Modern Life Pod. We're also going to put up an Instagram at some point this week, and I think we are working on having a website at some point too. So yeah, thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you guys next week.